Fire consumes everything in its path, but it also reveals the truth that lies beneath the ashes. When the alarm screamed through the Blackwood estate at 3 a.m., it wasn't the smoke that choked the life out of the pack. It was the betrayal. While the titled Luna fled the burning nursery with nothing but her jewelry box, an invisible Omega nanny threw herself into the flames. She didn't do it for glory. She didn't do it for the Alpha. She did it because a mother isn't defined by blood, but by who she is willing to die for. Tonight, the Alpha King finds out who actually holds the heart of his pack. The rain in Seattle usually washed things clean, but on the night of November 14th, it only made the smoke hang lower, pressing against the earth like a bruise. Tessa Hart was awake before the alarms triggered. Being an Omega in the Blackwood pack meant your instincts were tuned to danger, not because you could fight it, but because you had to survive it. She was sitting at the corner of the staff quarters, folding the tiny cashmere onesies that belonged to the Alpha's twins, Noah and Ivy. They were 3 years old, chaotic, beautiful, and completely ignored by the woman who had birthed them. Vivian Blackwood, the Luna, a woman who looked like a supermodel and possessed the maternal instincts of a viper. Tessa smelled it first, not the rain, not the damp pine of the Washington forest, but sulfur and burning drywall. The nursery, Tessa didn't think. She didn't put on shoes. She sprinted barefoot across the wet cobblestones of the courtyard connecting the staff annex to the main manor. The Alpha King, Silas Blackwood, was in Chicago on business, negotiating territory lines with the Midwest clans. The manor was supposed to be safe. As Tessa rounded the corner, the east wing exploded outward. Glass shattered, raining down like jagged diamonds. The heat hit her face with the force of a physical slap. The nursery was on the second floor. The flames were already licking up the ivy trellis. "Help! Someone!" Tessa screamed, her voice cracking against the roar of the fire. The pack warriors were scrambling, shouting orders, but the confusion was absolute. The fire suppression system had failed, sabotaged, though she wouldn't know that until later. Then she saw it, a moment that would be burned into her retina forever. The garage doors, away from the fire, were open. The sleek, matte black Audi RS7, Vivian's personal car, screeched out of the driveway. Under the harsh floodlights, Tessa saw Vivian in the driver's seat. She wasn't looking at the burning house. She was checking her reflection in the rear-view mirror, adjusting her sunglasses. There were no car seats in the back. Vivian was leaving, alone. Rage, hot and white, eclipsed the fear in Tessa's chest. She left them. Tessa didn't wait for the warriors. She grabbed a heavy woolen blanket from the patio furniture, dunked it into the decorative fountain, and threw it over her head. She kicked open the side door and ran into the inferno. The heat was a physical weight, crushing her lungs. The smoke was thick, oily, and black. Tessa dropped to her knees, crawling under the haze. The grand staircase was compromised, the wood groaning, but the service elevator, an old iron cage, was still holding. She scrambled up the service ladder instead, her hands blistering as she grabbed the hot rungs. "Noah! Ivy!" she screamed, inhaling soot. She reached the second-floor landing. The nursery door was painted white with little gold crowns. Now the paint was bubbling, peeling away like dead skin. The handle was searing hot. Tessa used the wet blanket to turn it. Locked. Who locks a nursery from the outside? She threw her shoulder against it. Once. Twice. The wood splintered. She fell into the room. The fire hadn't fully consumed the room yet, but the smoke was deadly. In the corner, huddled under the crib, were two small shapes. "Tessa!" It was Noah, his voice a tiny squeak of terror. She crawled to them. They were coughing, their eyes streaming. Ivy was clinging to her brother, shaking. "I've got you," Tessa choked out, wrapping the wet wool blanket around both of them, cocooning them against her chest. "I've got you. Hold your breath." She looked at the window, too high to jump. The door she came in was now a wall of fire. The floor beneath them groaned. The support beams were snapping. "Tessa, hot," Ivy whimpered. "I know, baby, I know." Tessa backed them into the ensuite bathroom. It was tiled, stone and ceramic. It might hold longer. She turned on the shower, soaking them, soaking herself. She dragged them into the cast-iron bathtub, and pulled her body over theirs, forming a human shield. "Don't look," she whispered into their hair, which smelled of lavender shampoo and smoke. "Just listen to my heart." A massive crash echoed from the bedroom. The roof had come down. The heat surged, stinging the hair on Tessa's arms, blistering the skin on her back. She gritted her teeth, refusing to scream, refusing to let the pups hear her pain. She whispered a prayer to the moon goddess, though she had never felt favored by her before. "Take me," she pleaded, "but let Silas find them." The darkness closed in, not from the smoke, but from the pain. The last thing she heard was the roar of a wolf, a sound so powerful it shook the foundations of the house. Silas was home. Silas Blackwood tore the door of his private jet off its hinges before the stairs were even fully lowered. He didn't shift into his wolf form. His human form was currently terrifying enough. He had felt the disturbance in the bond an hour ago, a jagged panic. But the link to Vivian? It was silent. Dead silent. A black SUV waited on the tarmac. "Get me to the manor," Silas growled at his beta Kincaid. "Now!" Kincaid, a man who had seen war, looked pale. "Alpha. The reports. The nursery is gone." Silas didn't speak. The air in the car dropped 10 degrees. His wolf, a massive black beast named Shadow, was clawing at the back of his mind, demanding blood. When they arrived, the manor was a skeleton of glowing embers. Fire trucks from 3 counties were spraying foam, but the damage was catastrophic. The rain hissed as it hit the hot stone. Silas burst out of the car. "My children!" His voice was a command that forced the firefighters to pause. "Where are my children?" A frantic shuffling occurred near the ambulances. A figure wrapped in a gold foil blanket emerged. It was Vivian. She looked distressed. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled. But Silas, with his heightened senses, smelled something else. He smelled Chanel No. 5. He smelled adrenaline, but he didn't smell soot. He didn't smell burn cream. "Silas!" She ran to him, collapsing into his chest. "Oh God, Silas, I tried to get to them." Silas held her by the shoulders, his grip bruising. He looked into her eyes. They were wide, wet with tears. "Where are they, Vivian?" "The fire. It was too fast," she sobbed, burying her face in his coat. "The stairs collapsed. I couldn't reach the door. I barely got out with my life." Silas felt his heart stop. The world went grey. "You left them?" "I didn't leave them. I went to get help," she shrieked, playing to the crowd of pack members watching. "I am their mother. Do you think I wanted this?" The grief was a physical blow. Silas fell to his knees, a guttural roar tearing from his throat. The pack lowered their heads. The Alpha King was broken. "Wait!" The shout came from the ruins. A firefighter, a large man named Henderson, was waving from the second-floor balcony that had partially survived. "We found something in the tub. They're alive. We have heartbeats." Silas moved faster than human sight. He didn't wait for the ladder. He scaled the trellis, ignoring the heat that still radiated from the stones. He vaulted onto the balcony and shoved past the firefighters. In the bathroom, the porcelain tub was a black smear. But inside was a lump of wet, charred wool. Silas's hands shook as he peeled back the layers. There, curled in a ball, were Noah and Ivy. They were unconscious, their skin pink and irritated, but they were breathing. They were alive, but they weren't alone. Wrapped around them, her body locked in a rigor of protection, was a girl. Her back was a map of angry red burns. Her shirt had melted into her skin in places. Her hair was singed off on one side. Silas froze. He recognized the scent, even through the burnt flesh. It was soft vanilla and old books. The nanny. "Is she?" Silas asked, his voice trembling. "Barely," a paramedic said, checking her pulse. She took the brunt of the heat. She acted as a heat shield. If she hadn't covered them, their lungs would have boiled. She saved them, Alpha. Silas looked at the girl. Tessa. He had barely spoken 10 words to her in 2 years. He thought she was just background noise. He reached out, brushing a smudge of ash from her cheek. As his skin touched hers, a jolt of electricity. pure, raw, and undeniable, shot up his arm and slammed into his chest. Shadow howled in his mind. "Mate." Silas recoiled, shocked. The bond. It was dormant, hidden. Until now. Why now? Because she had risked everything? Or because his wolf finally recognized the quality of her soul? He looked back at the driveway, where Vivian was watching from the ground. She wasn't crying anymore. She was typing on her phone. Silas picked up Noah and Ivy, handing them carefully to the paramedics. "Take them to the best hospital. Put them under 24-hour guard. Only Kincaid is allowed in." "And the girl?" the paramedic asked. Silas scooped Tessa up in his arms. She was terrifyingly light. Her head lolled against his chest, staining his expensive suit with soot and blood. He didn't care. "I will carry her," Silas snarled, his eyes flashing gold. He walked out of the ruins, carrying the woman who had done what his wife wouldn't. He walked past the crowd. He walked straight up to Vivian. Vivian gasped when she saw the body in his arms. "Is that the help? Is she dead?" Silas looked at his wife, his chosen mate, not his fated one, and felt nothing but cold, Arctic hatred. "She is alive," Silas said, his voice quiet and deadly. "And she did your job. Silas, I told you I couldn't—" "I smelled you, Vivian," Silas interrupted, stepping closer. "I smelled the interior of your Audi. You didn't run from the stairs. You ran from the garage. You didn't try to save them. You tried to save your jewelry." Vivian paled. "You're delusional with grief." "Kincaid!" Silas barked. The beta materialized instantly. "Confiscate the Luna's phone, seize her car, and lock her in the guest wing. She speaks to no one." "You can't do this!" Vivian screamed as two warriors grabbed her arms. "I am the Luna! I am the mother of your heirs!" Silas looked down at the unconscious girl in his arms. Tessa stirred slightly, a whimper of pain escaping her lips. Silas pulled her closer, his chin resting on her soot-stained forehead. "Not anymore," Silas whispered. He turned to his beta. "Get Dr. Aris. Tell him if she dies, I burn this whole city down." Silas carried Tessa into the waiting ambulance, refusing to let go of her hand. The bond was snapping into place, aggressive and possessive. He had almost lost her before he even found her. He didn't know yet that the fire was just a distraction. He didn't know that Vivian wasn't just selfish. She was a conspirator. But as the ambulance doors closed, Silas Blackwood made a silent vow. Burn the world. Save her. The VIP wing of St. Jude's Pack Hospital was usually reserved for high-ranking officials, visiting dignitaries, and combat-injured warriors. It wasn't meant for nannies. But Silas Blackwood had stationed 2 enforcers at the elevator and 1 at the door of room 402. Inside, the only sound was the rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitor and the hiss of the oxygen ventilator. Silas sat in a stiff leather chair he had dragged right up to the bedside. He hadn't changed his clothes. His bespoke Italian suit was ruined, stiff with dried blood and soot, the white shirt grey and torn. He didn't care. To the nurses who came in to change IV bags, he looked like a statue carved from grief and rage. "Alpha," Dr. Aris said softly, stepping into the room. He was an older wolf, grey-haired and weary. "You need to eat. You need to shower. Your healing factor is trying to compensate for the stress, but you're burning energy too fast." "Tell me about her back," Silas said, his voice grave. He didn't look at the doctor. His eyes were fixed on Tessa's hand, which lay limp against the white sheet. It was the only part of her not bandaged. "It's extensive," Aris admitted, checking the chart. "Third-degree burns across 40% of her dorsal area. She took the falling beam directly across her shoulders. The skin grafts are holding, and because she has wolf blood, she will heal without the scarring a human would suffer. But the pain, Silas, the pain when she wakes up will be excruciating." Silas's jaw tightened. "She won't feel it. Keep her sedated if you have to." "We can't keep her under forever. Her wolf needs to wake up to start the internal healing." Aris paused, lowering his voice. "Silas, we found something else in her blood work." Silas finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, the gold irises swirling with exhaustion. "What?" "Wolfsbane. Trace amounts. But chronic." The air in the room seemed to shatter. Silas stood up slowly, towering over the doctor. "Explain." "It wasn't enough to kill her," Aris said quickly, "but enough to suppress her wolf, enough to make her weak, docile, enough to hide her scent." Silas looked back at Tessa. A memory flashed. Vivian insisting that the staff take daily vitamins to boost their immune systems against the damp Seattle weather. Vivian, who had always complained that omegas smelled sour. It wasn't just neglect. It was suppression. Vivian had been poisoning the staff, specifically Tessa, to keep them weak, to keep Tessa's scent from triggering the bond. "She knew," Silas whispered, a terrifying realization dawning on him. "Vivian knew she was my mate before I did." "It's possible," Aris said. If your ex-wife suspected, dosing the girl with wolfsbane would mask the pheromones. It's an old, dark trick, illegal for a century." Silas reached out and gently took Tessa's hand. It was rough, calloused from scrubbing floors and washing dishes, chores a royal nanny shouldn't have been doing alone. "Wake up, Tessa," he commanded softly, a plea wrapped in an alpha's order. "Wake up so I can fix this." As if his voice was the tether she needed, Tessa's fingers twitched. The heart monitor sped up. Beep, 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 beep. Her eyelids fluttered. She let out a dry, raspy cough. Silas was there instantly, holding a cup of ice chips to her lips. "Easy," he murmured. "Don't try to speak." Tessa's eyes opened. They were a startling, clear hazel, green and brown like the forest floor. They were wide with panic. She tried to sit up, but the pain slammed her back down. She gasped, a tear leaking from the corner of her eye. "Noah, Ivy!" Her voice was a broken whisper. "The fire." The door was locked. "They are safe," Silas said firmly, leaning into her line of sight. "Tessa, look at me. Noah and Ivy are safe. They are in the pediatric wing. Slight smoke inhalation, nothing more. You saved them." Tessa blinked, focusing on him. She seemed confused to see the Alpha King, the man who usually looked right through her, hovering inches from her face, looking at her as if she were the only thing in the world. "Alpha?" she croaked. Why are you here?" "Because you are here," he said simply. Tessa tried to pull her hand away, shame coloring her cheeks. "I'm sorry about the nursery. I couldn't save the furniture. The portraits." Silas let out a dark, incredulous laugh. "Tessa, you think I care about furniture? You saved my bloodline. You walked into fire when their own mother drove away." Tessa went still. She left. She left. "I saw the car," Tessa whispered, the memory surfacing. I thought maybe she went to get the guards. But she had sunglasses on." Silas closed his eyes for a moment, the confirmation settling like a stone in his gut. "Rest now. You are safe. No one will hurt you again." "I need to get back to work," she mumbled, the drugs pulling her under. "The laundry isn't done." "You will never do laundry again," Silas vowed, though she was already asleep. "You will never lift a finger again unless it is to point at what you want." The door opened behind him. It was Kincaid. The beta looked grim. "Alpha, we have a problem. Unless the hospital is on fire, get out." "It's the press," Kincaid said, "and the council. Vivian didn't just call a lawyer. She called the Seattle Tribune. She's giving an exclusive interview from her holding cell. She's claiming you set the fire to frame her and kill her so you could be with your mistress." Silas turned slowly. The gold in his eyes had turned to molten lava. "She called Tessa my mistress? She's spinning a narrative, Silas, and because no one knows about the mate bond yet, it looks bad. She's playing the victim. She says you're abusive. She says Tessa kidnapped the kids and started the fire, and that she fled to get the police because she didn't trust your guards." Silas looked at the sleeping girl one last time, then straightened his jacket. The tenderness vanished, replaced by the ruthlessness that had made him the king of the Western Packs. "Watch her," Silas ordered Kincaid. "If she wakes up, tell her I am handling it." "Where are you going?" "To the press conference," Silas said, cracking his knuckles. "Vivian wants a show. I'll give her a finale." The pack hall was buzzing. Reporters from the human world, who thought this was just an eccentric billionaire family scandal, and scribes from the Werewolf Chronicles were packed into the atrium. Vivian Blackwood stood at a podium. Even in custody, she had managed to look immaculate. She wore a white dress, symbolizing innocence, and had clearly applied makeup to look paler, more fragile. "I begged him," Vivian was saying into the microphones, tears streaming down her face. "I begged Silas to fire that girl. I knew she was unstable. I saw the way she looked at my children. Possessive. Crazy. Last night I woke up to the smell of smoke. I ran to the nursery, but the door was barricaded. I heard her inside, laughing." A collective gasp went through the room. "I drove to the police station," Vivian sobbed. "I didn't trust his private security. They answer only to him. I knew if I stayed, he would kill me too. Silas has wanted to replace me for years. He found a young, impressionable Omega, and used her to destroy my family." The flashes of the cameras were blinding. The narrative was taking hold. The evil king and his psycho mistress. "And now," Vivian cried, "he has locked me up. He refuses to let me see my babies. Please, someone help me." Enough. The word wasn't shouted, but it carried the weight of alpha authority. It silenced the room instantly. The double doors at the back of the hall swung open. Silas Blackwood walked in. He wasn't wearing a white suit. He was wearing the same ruined, bloody clothes from the fire. He looked like a demon rising from hell. He walked down the center aisle. Reporters scrambled out of his way. Vivian faltered. "Silas, I didn't know you were—" Silas climbed the stage. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at Vivian. Up close, he could smell the fear beneath her perfume. "You claim you went to the police," Silas said, his voice amplified by the microphone he snatched from the stand. "The fire started at 3:12 a.m. Your car left the estate at 3:14 a.m. He pulled a remote from his pocket and clicked it. A large screen behind the podium flickered to life. "This is the GPS data from your Audi RS7, Silas narrated coldly. The map showed the car leaving the estate, but it didn't go to the police station. It didn't go to the fire department. "You drove 6 miles to the scenic overlook on Highway 9, Silas said, "and you sat there for 45 minutes. The map showed the car idling. You sat there and watched the smoke rise," Silas accused, stepping closer to her, "waiting for the roof to collapse, waiting for your children to die so you wouldn't have to deal with a custody battle." "That's fake," Vivian shrieked. "He forged it." "And this?" Silas clicked the remote again. Audio filled the room. It was a recording from the car's internal dash system, which recorded automatically when the car idled for more than 10 minutes. Vivian's voice, clear as day. "Pick up, Dominic. Pick up. It's done. The fire is huge. There's no way they got out. The nanny is in there too. 2 birds, 1 stone. We're free. Get the offshore accounts ready." The silence in the room was absolute. Even the human reporters, who didn't understand pack politics, understood murder. Vivian's face went white. She stumbled back. "No, I was acting. I was—" "And regarding the unstable Omega, who you claim kidnapped my children," Silas continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "She is currently in the ICU with 3rd-degree burns because she used her own body to shield my son and daughter while you sat on a hill and checked your bank account." Silas turned to the cameras. "Vivian Blackwood is stripped of her title, effective immediately. She is no longer Luna. She is a rogue, and by the laws of our kind, the penalty for attempted pupside and treason is death." Vivian screamed as Kincaid and 2 enforcers marched onto the stage. They didn't treat her gently this time. They cuffed her hands behind her back with silver chains. "Dominic will kill you!" Vivian spat as she was dragged away. "You think you've won? You don't even know who he is." Silas watched her go, his face impassive. "I will find him, and I will burn him too." He stepped off the stage, ignoring the barrage of questions from the press. He had cleared Tessa's name, but the mention of Dominic gnawed at him. Vivian was vain and cruel, but she wasn't a mastermind. Someone had pulled her strings. Back at the hospital, Silas found the room empty of nurses. Sitting on the edge of the bed, despite her injuries, was Tessa. She had pulled the IV stand with her. She was trying to stand up. "What do you think you are doing?" Silas demanded, rushing to support her. "I heard the TV," Tessa gritted out, pointing to the wall-mounted screen that was replaying the press conference. She said I hurt them. I have to go tell them I didn't." "Tessa, stop." Silas wrapped his arms around her uninjured waist. "Did you not hear the part where I destroyed her?" Tessa looked up at him, her hazel eyes searching his face. "You defended me, publicly. Why?" "Because it is the truth." "You played a recording," Tessa said softly. She was talking to Dominic. Silas stiffened. "Do you know that name?" Tessa hesitated. She looked frightened. I wasn't sure before, but I used to hear her on the phone late at night. She called him Dom. I thought it was her brother. But once a man came to the service entrance. He said he was a pest control inspector. But he didn't check for bugs. He checked the fire alarms. He disabled the sensors in the nursery. Silas felt the blood drain from his face. What did he look like? Tall. Scar above his left eyebrow. Ice blue eyes. He smelled like ozone and rot. Silas cursed. Dominic Thorne, the alpha of the Shadow Creek Pack, a rival pack that had been contesting the northern borders for a decade. Thorne wasn't just a lover. He was a political enemy attempting a coup by wiping out Silas's heirs. "He was in my house," Silas growled, "and I didn't know." "He gave me something," Tessa whispered. "That day, he gave me a tea bag. Said it was from the Luna. Peppermint. I drank it before my shift. The wolf's bane," Silas realized. "They drugged you so you wouldn't smell him, so you wouldn't sense the danger." He pulled Tessa closer, burying his face in the crook of her neck, careful of the bandages. He inhaled her scent. Vanilla, rain, and now the faint, healing aroma of the hospital. "I failed you," Silas murmured against her skin. "I was so busy being a king. I failed to be a protector." Tessa's hand came up, hovering hesitantly, before resting on the back of his head. Her fingers tangled in his hair. The touch sent shock waves through both of them. "You saved me from the fire," she said. "You're here now." Silas pulled back, looking into her eyes. The bond was screaming now, a deafening roar of mate, mate, mate. "Tessa," he said, his voice rough, "there is something you need to know. Something the wolf's bane was hiding from you." "What?" "The reason I found you. The reason I can't leave this room. The reason I want to tear the throat out of anyone who looks at you." He took her hand and placed it over his heart. It was beating like a war drum. "You are not just the nanny, Tessa. You are my mate." Tessa's eyes went wide. She stopped breathing for a second. "That's impossible. I'm an Omega with no lineage. You are the Alpha King." "The moon goddess does not make mistakes," Silas said intensely. "Vivian was a contract. You are my soul." Before she could process this, the door creaked open. Two small figures in hospital gowns stood there, holding hands. "Daddy?" Noah whispered. "Tessa?" Ivy chirped. Silas stepped back, opening his arms. The twins ran past him, straight to the bed. They scrambled up, carefully, as if they instinctively knew she was hurt, and curled up against her legs. "We missed you," Noah said, burying his face in the blanket near Tessa's knee. Tessa looked at the children, then at Silas. Tears welled in her eyes. She wasn't an Omega nanny anymore. She was the center of this fractured, healing family. "I missed you too," she whispered. Silas watched them. The picture was perfect. The true queen and her heirs. But outside the window, the storm was picking up. Dominic Thorne was out there, and he now knew that his plan had failed. The fire hadn't killed the heirs. It had only forged a stronger, deadlier family unit. War was coming. But this time, Silas wasn't fighting for territory. He was fighting for her. 3 weeks later, the Blackwood Pack had moved operations to the Iron Keep, a fortress buried deep within the Cascade Mountains. The burnt manor in Seattle was a crime scene, a monument to the betrayal that had nearly wiped out the royal line. For Tessa, the Iron Keep was both a sanctuary and a prison. Her burns were healing, leaving silvery, fern-like patterns across her back that Dr. Aris promised would fade. But the psychological scars were fresh. She had been moved from the staff quarters to the Alpha's private suite. Her clothes were no longer hand-me-down uniforms, but silk and cashmere, ordered specifically by Silas. The transition was jarring. She stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror, adjusting the collar of a navy blue dress that cost more than her entire life's earnings. "It fits perfectly, my lady," a maid said, bowing her head. It was Sarah, a girl Tessa had shared a bunk with just a month ago. "Please, Sarah, don't bow," Tessa pleaded, turning around. "It's just me. Tessa." "You are the Alpha's mate," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. "You are the lunar designate. If I don't bow, the head housekeeper will skin me." Tessa sighed. The hierarchy of the pack was rigid. She had jumped from the bottom rung to the very top, and the vertigo was dizzying. The door opened, and Silas walked in. He looked exhausted. The hunt for Dominic Thorne and the rogue faction was taking a toll. His face was shadowed with stubble, his sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms tense with stress. But when he saw her, the tension melted. "You look—" Silas paused, his eyes darkening with appreciation. "Regal." "I look like I'm playing dress-up," Tessa countered, wringing her hands. "Silas, I can't do this. The council is arriving in an hour. They won't listen to me. They know I used to scrub their toilets." Silas crossed the room in 2 strides, taking her hands. "Let them underestimate you. That is their mistake. You saved the heirs when the high-born failed. That gives you more right to sit at that table than any of them." "They want you to marry a noble from the southern clans to secure an alliance," Tessa reminded him. "I've heard the whispers. They say an Omega Luna will make the pack weak." Silas growled low in his chest. "Let them whisper. If they speak it aloud, I will rip their tongues out. That's not a policy, Silas. That's a massacre." She squeezed his hands. "I have to earn it. I can't just be your mate. I have to be their Luna." Silas kissed her forehead. "Come, the war room awaits. Dominic has made a move." The war room was a bunker of concrete and steel, dominated by a massive digital map of the territory. 12 council members, old, scarred, and stuck in their ways, sat around the table. When Silas entered with Tessa, the room went silent. General Draven, a man with a silver eye patch, scoffed openly. "Alpha, this is a strategic meeting. Is it wise to bring civilians?" "Tessa is not a civilian," Silas said, pulling out a chair for her at his right hand. "She is the only reason we have heirs to protect. Sit, Draven." The general sat, but his disdain was palpable. "Report," Silas commanded. "Thorne's forces are hitting our supply lines here, here, and here," Draven said, pointing to the map. "He's cutting off food and medical supplies to the outer sectors. He's trying to starve the pack into rebellion. We need to strike a stronghold in the Shadow Creek Valley." "That's what he wants," Tessa said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Draven turned to her slowly. "Excuse me." "It's a trap," Tessa said, her heart pounding. She stood up, walking to the map. She had spent years listening to the guards talk while she served them coffee. She knew things they didn't think she understood. "Thorne isn't in Shadow Creek. That terrain is marshland. It's impossible to move heavy artillery through there in this season." "And what would a nanny know of artillery?" Draven sneered. "I know that Thorne's brother owns a trucking company based out of the abandoned industrial park in Sector 4, Tessa said, pointing to a grey area on the map. "I used to sign for packages from there. The drivers complained about the mud in the marsh, saying they had to reroute everything through the old highway." She traced a line on the map. "If he's cutting off supplies here, he's funneling them. Here, to the industrial park. That's his real base. The marsh is a decoy to draw your heavy hitters into the mud where his snipers can pick you off." The room went deadly silent. Silas looked at the map, then at his head of intel. "Check the thermal satellite feeds for Sector 4, now," the intel officer typed furiously. A moment later, an image popped up. Heat signatures, hundreds of them, clustered in the warehouses of Sector 4. "She's right," the officer breathed. "It's a massive staging ground. If we had gone to the marsh, we would have been flanked and slaughtered." Silas looked at Tessa with a fierce pride that made her knees weak. He turned to Draven. It seems the nanny just saved your battalion, General. Draven looked at Tessa, his face flushing red. He gave a stiff, jerky nod. My apologies. Luna. It was the first time anyone other than Silas had used the title. But the victory was short-lived. The communications screen flickered. Static cut through the room, followed by a voice that sounded like grinding glass. Silas Blackwood. It was Dominic Thorne. You found my little hiding spot. Clever, Dominic's voice sneered. But you're looking at the wrong screen. What do you want, Thorne? Silas barked. I want a trait. You have something of mine. My freedom to rule the North. And I have something of yours. The video feed switched. Silas's blood ran cold. On the screen, bound to a chair, beaten and bloody, was Kincaid. The beta's face was swollen, one eye shut. But he was alive. Kincaid, Silas breathed. He was sniffing around a bit too close to my operations. Dominic said, Here is the deal. You come to the old steel mill at midnight, alone. We settle this, alpha to alpha. If I see one warrior, one drone, or one cop, your beta dies, and I'll send him back to you in pieces. The screen went black. Silas slammed his fist onto the table, cracking the reinforced glass. Everyone out! Prepare the strike teams! He said alone, Silas. Tessa grabbed his arm. He'll kill him. He'll kill him anyway. Silas raged, his wolf surfacing. Kincaid is my brother in all but blood. I cannot leave him. I know, Tessa said, her mind racing. But you can't go alone. That's suicide. Dominic has a trick up his sleeve. He always does. I have no choice. Silas turned to her, cupping her face. I have to go. You stay here. You are in charge of the heirs. Vorian. Captain Vorian, the head of the Royal Guard, stepped forward. He was a massive wolf, silent and efficient. Lock this fortress down, Silas ordered. No one in or out. Protect the Luna and the pups with your life. Yes, Alpha, Vorian said, bowing low. Tessa felt a shiver run down her spine. She looked at Vorian. There was something wrong. His scent was masked by heavy cologne, but underneath there was a faint, metallic tang, like copper or dried blood. Silas, she started. I have to go, Tessa. He kissed her hard, a kiss that tasted of desperation and goodbye. Keep them safe. He turned and stormed out, taking the war with him. Tessa stood in the war room, the silence pressing in. She looked at Captain Vorian. He was watching the door where Silas had exited, and for a split second, Tessa saw a smile ghost across his lips. It wasn't a smile of loyalty. It was the smile of a predator who had just watched the shepherd leave the flock. The storm outside the iron keep was relentless, battering the stone walls with sleet and wind. It was 11 p.m. Silas was halfway to the steel mill. Inside the nursery suite, Tessa was pacing. Noah and Ivy were asleep in the panic room, a reinforced bunker hidden behind the bookcase. Tessa had insisted on moving them there an hour ago, claiming the storm was too loud for them to sleep in their beds. You're being paranoid, my lady, Captain Vorian had said, standing guard at the main door of the suite. Perhaps, Tessa had replied, clutching a baby monitor. But a mother's paranoia keeps children alive. She sat on the edge of the large bed in the main room, waiting. Her instincts, honed by years of being invisible, were screaming at her. Why did Vorian disable the internal motion sensors? He claimed it was a glitch caused by the lightning. Why were the perimeter guards not checking in on the radio every 15 minutes? Tessa stood up. She needed water. She walked to the small kitchenette in the suite. As she passed Vorian, she caught that scent again. Copper. And peppermint. She froze. Peppermint. The same scent as the tea Dominic Thorne had sent to the manor, the scent that masked the wolf's bane. Vorian wasn't wearing cologne. He was wearing an inhibitor to hide his scent, masked by peppermint oil. Is something wrong, Luna? Vorian asked. He hadn't turned around, but his posture had shifted. The deference was gone. Tessa's hand drifted to the marble countertop. Her fingers closed around the handle of a heavy cast-iron skillet left from dinner. Vorian, she said, keeping her voice steady. How long have you known Dominic Thorne? The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Vorian turned slowly. The professional mask was gone. His eyes were cold, dead things. Long enough, To know he pays better than Silas, Vorian said smoothly, and he promises power, not just servitude. You're the mole, Tessa whispered. You let the inspector into the manor. You sabotaged the fire suppression system. And you were supposed to die in that fire, you little rat, Vorian snarled, stepping toward her. You and those brats. You ruined everything by being heroic. But tonight, we correct that error. He pulled a radio from his belt. Team B, the Alpha is gone. The bitch knows. Move in. Kill the pups first. No, Tessa screamed. She didn't run away. She ran at him. Vorian laughed, shifting his arm to backhand her. He was an elite warrior. She was a nanny. It should have been no contest. But Tessa had the element of surprise, and she had the skillet. She swung it with every ounce of hysterical strength she possessed. Clang! The iron connected with Vorian's temple. The blow didn't knock him out. He was too strong. But it stunned him. He stumbled back, growling, blood trickling down his face. Tessa didn't wait. She bolted for the panic room, slamming the heavy steel door shut and spinning the locking wheel just as Vorian's body slammed against it from the other side. Boom! Open it, Tessa! Vorian roared. There's nowhere to go. My men have the building. Tessa leaned against the door, gasping. Inside the panic room, Noah and Ivy woke up, whimpering. Shh, she soothed, sliding to the floor to hug them. It's a game. We're playing hide and seek. She looked around the panic room. It was stocked with food, water, and a secure line to the Alpha. She grabbed the red phone. Dead. The line had been cut. She looked at the monitors. The cameras showed chaos. Men in black tactical gear, rogues, were swarming the hallway. The loyal guards were being gunned down or were already dead. Vorian had opened the gates from the inside. Silas was an hour away. He would never make it back in time. Think, Tessa, think, she muttered, rocking Ivy. She looked at the ventilation grate in the corner. It was too small for an adult, but Noah, she said, grabbing the boy's shoulders. Listen to me. You know the air vents we used to whisper through at the manor? Yes, he trembled. This is just like that. I need you to take Ivy. Crawl through here. It leads to the laundry chute on the lower level. You land in the pile of sheets. Then you run to the garage. Hide in the trunk of the old blue sedan. Do not come out until your daddy opens it. Do you understand? But you? Noah asked, tears spilling over. I'm going to distract the bad wolf, Tessa said, kissing his nose. I'm going to be right behind you. She unscrewed the grate. She helped them in. Ivy clung to her hand. Go, Tessa whispered. Be brave. She watched their little feet disappear into the darkness. She replaced the grate. Then she turned back to the steel door. Vorian was using a plasma cutter on the hinges. Sparks were flying. He would be in within 2 minutes. Tessa looked around for a weapon. There was a flare gun in the emergency kit. A fire axe on the wall. She grabbed the axe. It was heavy, awkward in her hands. But then she felt it. A pulse, a heat rising from her belly, spreading to her chest. Her wolf, the wolf that had been poisoned, suppressed, and ignored for years, was waking up, and she was furious. My pups, the wolf growled in her mind. Not yours. The door hinges gave way with a screech of metal. The heavy door fell inward with a crash. Vorian stepped over it, flanked by 2 rogue wolves. He sneered when he saw Tessa standing there, holding the axe like a baseball bat. The room was empty of children. Where are they? Vorian demanded, sniffing the air. The vents. Clever girl, go get them, he barked at his men. No, Tessa screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was a command. An alpha command. The power of it hit the rogues like a physical wall. They stumbled, clutching their ears, whining. Even Vorian flinched. Tessa didn't shift. She didn't know how yet. But her eyes glowed a brilliant, radioactive violet, the color of a spirit wolf, an ancient, rare lineage that hadn't been seen in centuries. You will not touch them, Tessa said, her voice layered with the growl of her beast. Vorian shook his head, fighting the submission instinct. You're an Omega. I am the Luna, Tessa snarled, and you are trespassing. She swung the axe, not at Vorian, but at the exposed gas line running along the wall next to the emergency heater. Hiss! Gas flooded the small room instantly. Vorian's eyes widened. "You crazy bitch, you'll kill us all!" "I'm fireproof," Tessa said coldly, raising the flare gun she had hidden in her left hand. "Wait!" Vorian screamed, backing up. Tessa pulled the trigger. Whoosh! The panic room exploded. The blast threw Vorian and his men out into the hallway, engulfed in flames. Tessa was thrown backward into the far wall, the breath knocked out of her. The heat was intense, searing her healing skin. But her wolf rose up, wrapping her in a protective layer of energy. She scrambled up, coughing. The rogues were screaming, rolling on the floor. Vorian was down, unconscious or dead. She stumbled out into the hallway, the smoke alarm finally blaring. She had to get to the garage. She had to get to the kids. She ran through the burning corridor, stepping over the bodies of the traitors. She reached the service stairwell and practically fell down the flights. She burst into the garage. It was cold and dark. "Noah? Ivy?" she rasped. A shadow detached itself from the wall. It was Dominic Thorne. He was holding Noah by the back of his shirt in one hand and Ivy in the other. They were dangling, kicking and screaming. Dominic smiled, revealing sharp canines. He wasn't at the steel mill. That was a recording. He had been here the whole time waiting for Vorian to clear the path. "Impressive," Dominic said, looking at Tessa's glowing violet eyes and her soot-covered dress. "You took out my best captain. Silas chose better than I thought." "Put them down," Tessa said, her voice trembling with exhaustion. She raised the axe again, though her arms felt like lead. "I don't think so," Dominic tutted. "I came for the heirs. But now, I think I'll take the mate, too. Silas will give me the entire kingdom to get you three back." He opened the back of a van. "Get in, or I snap the boy's neck right now." Tessa froze. She dropped the axe. The violet light in her eyes faded. She couldn't risk Noah. "Good girl," Dominic sneered. He threw the kids into the van. He grabbed Tessa by her hair, dragging her towards the vehicle. Suddenly, a sound tore through the night. A sound so deep, so terrifying, that the concrete floor vibrated beneath their feet. It was a howl. But not from the mountains. From the tunnel entrance of the garage. A massive black wolf, larger than a horse, with eyes like burning gold, skidded around the corner, his claws tearing up the cement. Silas had come home, and he wasn't alone. Behind him were a dozen of his most lethal enforcers, and Kincaid, battered, but shifted into his russet wolf form. Dominic froze. "Impossible. You were at the mill." Silas shifted mid-stride, his momentum carrying him forward as he transformed back into human form. Naked, furious, and radiating death. "I smelled her fear," Silas roared, his voice shaking the rafters. "I smelled her blood from 10 miles away." Dominic threw Tessa to the ground and pulled a silver knife, holding it to her throat. "Back off," Dominic shouted, "or she dies." Silas stopped 10 feet away. His chest was heaving, his eyes locked on Tessa's. "Let her go, Dominic, and I will grant you a quick death. I'm walking out of here with her." Dominic pressed the knife into Tessa's skin. A drop of blood welled up. Silas flinched as if he had been cut himself. Tessa looked at Silas. She saw the terror in his eyes. He couldn't attack, not without risking her. She had to finish this. She remembered the self-defense move Kincaid had jokingly shown her in the kitchen once. If a wolf grabs you from behind, stomp the instep. Hard. Break the foot. Tessa grit her teeth. She channeled every ounce of her frustration, her pain, her love for this family into her right leg. She stomped down. Crack! Dominic howled in pain, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second. That was all Silas needed. He was a blur of motion. He didn't shift. He tackled Dominic with human hands, ripping him away from Tessa and slamming him into the side of the van. "Get the kids!" Silas screamed at Tessa. Tessa scrambled into the van, grabbing Noah and Ivy, shielding them with her body. Outside, the sound of breaking bones and wet tearing filled the air. It was brutal. It was primal. It was over in seconds. Silence fell over the garage. Tessa peered out. Dominic Thorne lay broken on the concrete. Silas stood over him, panting, his hands stained crimson. He turned to the van. The monster vanished, replaced by the desperate father and mate. "Tessa!" She crawled out, dragging the kids with her. Silas fell to his knees, wrapping his massive arms around all three of them. He buried his face in Tessa's neck, inhaling deeply, checking, verifying. "You're alive! You're alive!" "We're okay," Tessa sobbed, holding him tight. "We're okay." Kincaid limped over, draping a coat over Silas's shoulders and another over Tessa. "It's over, Alpha," Kincaid said, kicking Dominic's motionless body. "The head of the snake is gone." Silas looked up, his eyes meeting Tessa's. The violet in her eyes flared one last time before fading into warm hazel. "No," Silas said, kissing her lips softly. "It's just beginning." 6 months later, the rebuilt Blackwood Manor stood taller and stronger than before, its stone walls reinforced with steel and protective wards. But the real strength of the pack wasn't in the architecture. It was standing on the balcony, overlooking a crowd of 3,000 wolves. Tessa stood in a gown of deep emerald velvet, the fabric hiding the faint, silvery fern-like scars on her back, marks that Silas now worshipped as holy scripture. "Are you ready?" Silas asked, stepping up behind her. He wore his ceremonial alpha regalia, but his hand on her waist was tender, grounding. "I'm just a nanny from the staff quarters, Silas," Tessa whispered, though her violet eyes, now permanently tinged with that rare hue, shimmered with confidence. "No," Silas corrected, turning her to face him. Dr. Aris confirmed it. The spirit wolf lineage didn't die out. It went into hiding. It is a bloodline of pure protectors, wolves designed by the goddess to shield the innocent. You didn't just stumble into that fire, Tessa. Your soul was built for it. He picked up the Luna's crown. It wasn't the heavy, diamond-encrusted tiara Vivian had worn. It was a new piece, forged from the melted gold of the old throne and woven with raw iron. Beautiful, but unbreakable. "They aren't bowing to a title," Silas said, placing the weight of the pack upon her head. "They are bowing to the woman who bled for them." He led her to the railing. Below, the roar was deafening. Noah and Ivy, dressed in miniature formal wear, ran out and hugged Tessa's legs, waving to the crowd. The pack didn't just cheer, they howled, a sound of absolute unity. Tessa looked out at the sea of faces, then up at Silas, the man who had walked through hell to find her. "Long live the Luna!" Kincaid shouted from the front row. "Long live the Queen!" the pack responded. Silas pulled her in for a kiss that silenced the world. "My true mate," he murmured against her lips. Tessa smiled, her heart full. She had walked through the fire and found not just survival, but a kingdom. Wow, I still have goosebumps from that ending. Who else cheered when Tessa finally unleashed her spirit wolf in the garage? This story proves that a true Luna isn't defined by her bloodline, her jewelry, or her title. It's defined by her heart and what she is willing to sacrifice for the ones she loves. Vivian had the crown, but Tessa had the courage. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of betrayal, redemption, and true love, please give this video a massive thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I have another dramatic werewolf romance coming next week involving a rejected mate and a secret billionaire alpha that you do not want to miss. What was your favorite scene? The fire rescue or the garage showdown? Let me know in the comments below.